It is never a good sign when your third-party auditing company does decide to completely resign because they are uncomfortable with the fact that there are so many red flags in your accounting that they do not want to have their name stamped anywhere near that bad boy. And that's exactly what happened to SMCI, and we're starting to see this downturn, but I wonder what other stocks are doing this as well. Nvidia. Sorry. But today we need to get into some technical analysis. We're going to get into the SPY and the Q, so we're going to look at some other stocks today. I can't make it through all of them because we have tornado warnings around here. I got to make this a little bit quick, but I am going to give you guys some good technical analysis today, and we're going to really be focusing on, what's the probability we actually see a crash tomorrow because of some of the signals we are seeing out there. I think we need to pay attention to that. Remember, we're always paying attention to how we can get screwed in the market, but we can also say that tomorrow could be a very pivotal day in the market. So let's get into it. Now, first off, I think it's important that we look at some things going on to see what is seeing some major downside. If we notice, SMCI has been going straight down ever since March of 2024. We noticed that had some bad things happen behind the curtain. And even though those bad things did happen, that company is not really comfortable with how they are doing their accounting. So that just is interesting there. I will look into it further tonight so that we can understand it a little bit better. But it's never a good sign if the people who are auditing you are like, yeah, we want to be nowhere near this. That's just not a good sign. And then we can see that semiconductors are a big portion of this market right now. And it seems Nvidia is the only one holding that up, because as we go over to AMD, that's not looking good. And if that curls over on a weekly, that is a pretty damn bad signal. And remember, we're just paying attention to signals that look like potential crashes can happen. And one thing to look at here is going to be, well, it might have to be the housing sector, because the housing sector did give us that leading indicator. We're seeing if this can confirm this week, and this helped us out last week. Maybe it is something to pay attention to, because the housing sector can lead the market, so we're paying attention to that. But for the most part, this is confirming, and that says some dramatic weakness can come in if we are going to confirm this divergence by the end of the week. We still have 2 days left in this for now. So something that I wanted to pay attention to was, well, if these see weakness, if AMD and SMCI, those are experiencing some bad things, pretty much since March of this year. Can they base out? Of course they could base out, but really, is that enough to tell me there's a crash? I mean, I at least want to see some bad signals on like something we're going to look at first, which is probably like the SPY. I want to see if there's oh crap, there's some bad signals there. Oh my goodness, that is a major divergence right here on your MACD. That is a major divergence here that just got more significant on the RSI. So can a crash happen tomorrow? Well, volatility might be suggesting that, because as we pop over to volatility, not necessarily the weekly scale, but that is positive, in positive territory, and we're starting to coil up, right? We're getting tight, so a big move can come. But the signal we're waiting for to see if volatility is going to approach into this market is going to be if this daily can cross, and that is a strong move. We are back above 20. So I'm going to say this: if we don't want some bad things to happen to the market starting tomorrow, we need to get rid of this right here. We do not want to cross up this MACD on the daily scale, and that's why I think it's important we pay attention to both sides, right? We pay attention to both sides, because even though we're seeing all those bad signals, we notice that we've pulled back with time for quite a bit now, right? Ever since pretty much this point, we've been moving relatively sideways. So you could say October 14th, we've been moving relatively sideways. We have Nvidia outside of a monthly move. So like a lot of things are pointing to tomorrow's going to be a very freaking important day. So something we want to pay attention to is how we can get screwed. And something we were looking for today was the 2 hour to cross. If that 2 hour did cross, we were going to break that area, that trend line, but we have not lost this zone just yet. So just hold your horses, but that has crossed over. Negative territories right below you. If the selling does pile on tomorrow, watch out. Now we do have some earnings coming out. We'll pay attention to those in the morning, if I can go live and my roof isn't ripped off or something like that. But for the most part, we need to see us lose this zone. That 2 hour has crossed. So an area we can pay attention to for tomorrow to the downside is going to be 575.99, our daily expected move. And we do have 584.03 to the upside. We land in here 68% of the time. And something that I have noticed lately, which is really fishy, and we always have to be open to getting screwed, because truth is, the stock market, stocks, their prices, it has all turned into a big game that the market makers, that hedge funds, that people who are much richer than probably you and I have control of now, and they make the rules and we have to just play their game. So we always want to be reacting if we see things turn up. I wanted to point that out, that Just because signals look bad does not mean they can't make one more rig to move higher, okay? This has not lost this zone. Once we start to lose that zone, maybe we can change our tone. Once we cross over weekly charts, maybe we can change that tone. But for now, even if we keep 575.99, we do have a chance to head higher here. So that's something to pay attention to. Something on this channel we like to say is we trade like water, which means what do? We just follow our signals and we look at those signals. We move around the rocks. We have a ton of rocks in our stream right now with earnings, and we just want to end up in the meadow, okay? So we want to pay attention to our signals very closely here. You'll notice that the 2-hour is crossing. That would suggest, hey, I'm going to go negative, and that means tomorrow could get ugly. And volatility, I just showed you that on the daily scale. That just needs a little boost, and it needs to remain crossed, and the daily scale might be turning up for volatility and down for the SPY and momentum. So something we want to pay attention to early on in the day is the 30-minute. Okay, the 30-minute is going to be our overall bullish case. This is how we can go to an upside daily expected move, and that would be if this can turn up into positive territory. We are still in range here of that center line, which means we have an opportunity to go positive if that is able to build back. Now, there is a chance that we're going to get some kind of slight retest and then see that reject because we have lost this trend line, but ultimately losing that zone is going to be the most important thing for the SPY. Oh, but nothing bad's gonna happen because the Qs are still looking okay, right? They don't have any big reversal signals or anything like, oh shit. Okay, well the Qs actually do have a major divergence for a potential double top right now, and that is something to pay attention to because these closing bars are coming there, and you have the closing bar right there for today, and that is divergence across the way for a double top. And if this crosses over on a weekly, all of these signals are going to start to make a lot of sense. If we actually crash here, you're going to look back at it in 2 weeks and go, oh, that makes total sense. Now, I am leaning towards a bear market. Volatility is behaving like a bear market. We'll get into that later on in this video. So please subscribe and stick around for the end so we can talk about volatility with you. For now, we just wanted to talk about these ranges. Right, these ranges, and we touched on it a little bit with the SPY, but something I am noticing in the market is these ranges here, 501.42 to the upside for the Qs. We do have 491.34 to the downside for the Qs. I've noticed that when we have big ranges, we do nothing. When we have smaller ranges, more things are actually likely to happen these days, which is very, very interesting because usually when you have more implied volatility, you see bigger swings. But we've actually experienced when we have more volatility, you don't see anything, which kind of makes me feel like market makers are struggling here. I don't think they want this thing to go down. I think the volatility is there. I think the selling is there based on the dollar. But we're noticing people are rotating into TLT, and that hasn't fully hit the tape. But is it going to hit tomorrow? Because this 30-minute chart is one thing to pay attention to for bullishness. Once again, kind of like the SPY, where are we? We're right by that center line. We're actually still positive if we would cross up here. So watch out for that daily expected move if the 30-minute does cross to the upside. But the 2-hour is something that you really want to watch here. This is a signal we were paying attention to. We see it's an elongated divergence all the way across here, very, very flat here, but it got significant. And so now we need to pay attention because this is what can really make daily charts start to head in the downward direction. This is saying momentum is really weak here. We just got some bad news with SMCI. If people start to read into that, if earnings start to come out as bad, that can double down on what's going on with this rotation into TLT, okay? That is enough to give you some big downside. Now, I'm still slightly leaning towards the corrective move, but as I look at this more and more, you'll notice this. This is going to be the great signal. Thank you for paying attention to this because this is the great signal. And this is the 4-hour. And how I'm going to talk about this right now is just by showing off that pink line. We did it during the live video. I said, what happens outside of this pink line if you've been paying attention? Bad things. Bad things. Ooh. Ooh. And now we're up there one more time. So what could happen here and what does this look like? Well, let's look in the past. All right, let's look in the past when we made this top that went way down to where I could barely even see it. All right, we ended up going to the downside here. So what happened? We had a 4-hour divergence. That 4-hour divergence was not the most significant on the RSI, but it was in the downward direction. I could blow that up, but it is in the downward direction just slightly. And you'll notice what happened. Terrible things. Now, what signal is worse? This one here, outside of that annual expected move, that pink line, right? We have a 68% chance to close below that line by the end of the year. And what are you noticing as we're getting outside of that? And this is all the stuff that we do in the course. We're just using it more with a very macro level here, with a very macro expected move. So what are we noticing here? Well, this signal was kind of flat, and that produced this. This signal is showing major weakness in momentum. Okay, you can see this 4-hour chart. Which direction is this pointing? It's pointing straight down, very close to the center line. Which direction is the RSI pointing? It is pointing, well, it's kind of flat in here, right? A little bit flat, a little bit down, and then significant. Okay, so if this crosses over, this is a terrible signal as far as momentum goes. If we get bad news, you do have a good probability of seeing some crazy downward price action starting tomorrow. But we always want to pay attention to how we can get screwed. That's why we touched early on the cues saying, hey, watch out if that 30-minute is able to curl up. And we can pay attention to the downward expected move if this is able to curl down for some kind of support. But right now, with this kind of look, it looks way worse than last time. And if I wanted to go back a little bit further, you could probably even say there's quadruple divergence here for the 4-hour. It's really close to the center line. This just, I mean, I'm just going to stop fudging around here. We do have high potential for some major downside starting tomorrow. And what I think could be going on, and I put this a little bit on Twitter, was if they do not want the market to go down, we're going to see someone produce maybe even bad earnings, but end up going in the upward direction. We've noticed for quite some time now that while we have remained higher for the SPY, for the Qs in this type of area, well, we've noticed that it's mainly like 2 stocks, right? Like 10 stocks are going like this. 2 stocks are going like this, and the market remains higher. And those were Apple and Nvidia lately, but Apple is doing some interesting signals, and we're going to touch on that in a little bit. I know that this is more just talking about what is going on in the market, but the main signal you need to pay attention to is the 4-hour, actually. The 2 hours already confirmed it, saying the 4-hour has a great shot to turn down. That had divergence. Now the 4-hour has steep divergence, and if that turns down, well, I believe it might be even worse than last time. As far as it goes with Apple, you can see how yeah, that thing was still at all-time highs while other stocks were seeing some downside. Go look at Microsoft, go look at Google. But for the most part, looking at Apple on the 2-hour, we were saying, hey, watch the 2-hour, because if that crosses, you have a high probability to test the low or go make a new one. What are you doing? That crossed over. What are you doing while it crosses over? You're testing those closing lows. And that's exactly what we want to see in this type of area. Now we have to see, can that break? Can that continue because it is in negative territory, or is this going to whip back around? Because you notice that we are touching the trend line. We weren't able to break that today. So that's going to be something key to pay attention to. If Apple's able to break strongly to the upside, see a strong move above all these moving averages, that's going to be important. The 30-minute here is something we can see a little bounce in. But what's the difference between the 30-minute and the 2-hour here is the 30-minute is relatively negative. So if you're going to see some kind of bounce here, you really want to make that cup at the key level. You can see we have gaps in that level. You can see we have gaps in that level. You can see we have resistance in that level. You can see we have the use of that support. You can see when we lost it, we flushed. This is a very important level. And we've already gotten, what is it? 1 fake out, 2 fake out, maybe 3 fake out, 4 fake outs. So now we have to pay attention if this is going to rotate up and reject. That would be, it would make sense because it will take a little bit of work to go positive here. It's a little bit more likely on this 30-minute to go positive, but it still would take some work. So what we want to pay attention to is if that is failing. Now, if we are going to remain bullish, then I would like to react to that level, create a small handle, and then curl up into positive territory, maybe with some good earnings. And this is what I'm talking about. Okay, we could end up seeing a couple stocks hold the market up higher for a little bit of time because that's been happening for a long time already. It's been happening pretty much halfway through October to now. It's been happening. And then at the same time, we notice that Apple actually can do it one more time with some kind of earnings play. Watch out if that is given up for Apple. So it's 2 signals I'd be paying attention to is if the 2-hour can remain turning down. If this 30-minute can curl up into positive territory, it means you got a shot. If you curl up that 2-hour, you just might head a little bit higher here for Apple. Tesla doing something good, then doing something bad, right? We overall said when we saw this 30-minute crossing down, hey, look if that thing's able to curl back up. The problem with this is now you're inviting that cup and handle. Look where this was saved. It was saved right here. Look where we reacted to. That's your cup. Here's your handle. You're confirming down again. So the 5 was not able to hold up at it. We'll see if this changes by tomorrow, right? You always want to see if that 30-minute whips back around because it's really close to the center line. But something that we were talking about was once the 2-hour crosses, you're most likely going to see further downside. because the 30-minute, if that's able to base out before this 2-hour can cross, then that can see another move higher and maybe you'll get a pullback later. But since this 2-hour was able to cross, we started to say, hey, this could be some kind of ABC pattern. It could get down to this level. And the bearish case here would be, hey, we're going to fill that cup all the way down towards this level, make a handle, and end up dropping again. And the bullish case would actually be, I think, a little bit more likely for Tesla in this area, right? If we're taking the market structure in multiple stocks and the crash signals kind of out of the context of what we're talking about here, we could say that this is a very bullish move. We're still positive. So if this is able to base out at any time and curl up into positive territory, we could see another move higher as we are in positive territory and you don't have any reversal signals here for Tesla. For Nvidia once again doing the reversal signal that we've used 3 different times. We're still seeing if it's going to play out the 4th time, but we look like we were going to cross up and rejection. We look like we're going to try to cross up and rejection, and now we're about to go negative. So we still want to be aware if that 2 hours crossing up, that can invite positivity for Nvidia. Also with Nvidia, SMCI just got caught up by an auditing firm, right? Saying they're not comfortable backing the numbers, backing how they're doing things with their accounting. And I think that is something to pay attention to, because I think that's just one of the smaller guys compared to a big guy that I think's been fudging numbers in a weird way for a long time. They manipulate numbers to make the profits look better than they are. And that's been stated by people who are much smarter than me on television, on live news, on Bloomberg. This stuff has been talked about. Okay, so I'm not saying that that's an actual thing. It's just I'm reading into it. SMCI just said it. It was, those people that just left SMCI, I guess, they're the ones who are saying it happened. And so Nvidia could have the same exact problem, and people have talked about it in the past. Okay, so that's something clear that we need to keep in our mind. Now, the thing with technicals here is, where are we? We're outside of the monthly expected move. We have 1 day left to get back into our 68% zone. These yellow lines are your monthly expected move. If you want to learn these things, you can join the Patreon to get the levels that we're paying attention to. Those are going to update tomorrow night. So please join the Patreon so you can get those updated monthly expected moves for Nvidia. And also, you can learn how to actually trade these in the course, because these trades have been fan-freaking-tastic, right? We had 3 trades with Nvidia using this type of signal. We're getting a 4th one. Is it going to play out? You really only have 1 day left for that to fully say, yeah, I'm going to play out. But something key here is happening with the 2-hour divergence, flatness here showing divergence and rejection. That's a big deal, because look at your RSI pointing pretty much straight in the opposite direction of the price action right now. And now you're starting to see some weakness come in. So this is a trade we actually posted to Patreon, and these like to curl over daily charts. Did the daily chart curl over? Holy crap, it did. Okay, so even if we do, you have to pay attention to how you get screwed. They can always whip it back up, get you to be bullish again, and then turn that thing down on a 30-minute and not even cross this daily MACD. As long as daily momentum remains down, we should treat it like the daily is at least going to pull back. I'm just going to be talking about pullback for Nvidia here on the daily scale, because Nvidia is so high up into positive territory that if this can base out by earnings, it could see another move higher. So I would be paying attention to that. Now, if this daily is going to see dramatic downside, then you have to start to look at weekly charts. You have to make sure that weekly momentum is not showing weakness here. Maybe earnings produces some kind of bounce. But if this weekly looks like that, that's just another signal that looks like Nvidia is topping out. It looks like Nvidia could cross over on a weekly, and that can start to get ugly. So this is something to pay a lot of attention to, because this is one of the stocks, as well as Apple, that are really holding up the market at this point. You'd only have a couple stocks really holding up the market as far as real strength goes, like keeping the market at these all-time highs. As far as the SPY goes, this is one of those stocks, and that is showing you a major divergence. So if that crosses over, you have to be ready to react. But has that crossed over? No. So we will be talking about that later on, when that does, or if that does cross for Nvidia. Something you can pay attention to for tomorrow, though, is if we're going to use the monthly expected move as support. We kind of tried to do it today, right? But I just want to see, does this 2-hour, is it actually able to confirm more momentum to the upside? And does that create another divergence point, right? If these aren't real rejection divergences here, then this might make a move like that and curl right back down on your RSI. You'll get this to curl up, see a new high, everyone gets bullish, and then, we actually see another trap. So that's something we're going to pay attention to for Nvidia. So if the 2-hour does curl up, we can see positivity. The 30-minute, just to go into the shortest time frame, is starting to get pretty damn negative. negative. Now, the last time it was pretty negative, what happened? You see, it can happen. They can make this thing go up to the key level where they can start to sell out of their stocks. And something we did during the live video was prove, we showed the SEC filings. We showed what people have been doing with big amounts of money for the last 2-3 months with Nvidia. There is not one person, as far as insiders goes, there's not one person who was buying Nvidia stock. Every single one was red. Every single one was selling. And do you know who is selling the most? Their CEO. So if their CEO is selling a ton of stock over the last 2 months, you might want to pay attention. He's selling a ton of it, okay? Like more than ever in history is he selling at this point. So pay close attention because something fishy is going on here. The daily just crossed down and we have a very high probability of landing back in this zone by tomorrow close. But either way, we would just say a daily pullback at least is coming for Nvidia. AMD, just a quick mention here. There is no technicals to do here. After earnings, right, there's just no technicals when you see this big of a move, right? You might be basing out, you might be doing something, but you really have to see further price action for at least a few days, at least on a 30-minute chart in order to make a decision, right? Get close to that center line and curl down. The point I wanted to make real quickly with AMD was, well, let's look at it from the weekly scale, right? Let's look at this from the weekly scale because this looks like garbage. You are literally, Joe Biden, this looks like garbage, right by the center line. That means dramatic weakness. That means all of this might have been a fake out and we're about to go down, maybe even down to the 200. We might see AMD over the next couple of months down towards $112. And that is something very, very sketchy, but you've noticed that these semiconductors have backed off for a long time. And something you really want to pay attention to is we're showing you weekly charts, and those are big charts. Let's look at a monthly chart because if this is showing that divergence, and this is showing, ooh, and this is showing, that's not a good sign. And guess what? That is confirming, that could confirm tomorrow. Okay, so AMD is telling you that it is about to go down in a very, very dramatic fashion. That is what AMD is saying. I still think it could be like a bear market, so this could leak out for some time, right? Where this ends up at lower prices, but it takes a lot of time because that's the way that they steal the most amount of money from everyone in the market. Bear markets are known to hurt the most amount of people, not just retail, everyone. Okay, so pay attention to this because AMD is giving you a major reversal signal, and if Nvidia is so bullish, then why are competitors really suffering? Meta producing some good numbers here for earnings, really producing some good numbers here for earnings. We're seeing just a little bit of upside, but notice that's all being given away right now. So one thing to pay attention to with Meta, right? We're just touching on stuff quickly because I got to get out of here soon. But if that would turn down like this, that crosses down a weekly, that's closer to the center line. The weekly can start to reverse down, and that is a bad, bad sign for Meta. It means you can react all the way back down to 453.08 before you're going to get a bounce, and then that just might set up some kind of head and shoulders to keep heading down. So pay close attention because it looks like we could be forming a market top. We'll see if it's going to be a correction, but right now I do actually think you have a good probability that tomorrow might start some kind of stock market crash. Well, isn't it interesting that as some corruption gets exposed with SMCI, we're probably going to find out more about that as we're seeing some tops in a lot of stocks. A couple stocks that aren't doing too many bad things right now are actually AMC and GME. They curled up on dailies. They look pretty good. For AMC to see the big move, you got to get through 470. GME's already doing it. It's already outside of it. We're getting some wonky bars. We got to pay attention because this is where the fight will happen. This is where, hey, we could get some kind of retest. People start to go, oh no, it's going to fail. It's done. It's done. And then guess what? This daily remains curled up. You still have a chance. This daily is in positive territory. If that remains curled up, I still am pretty confident in it. And we are outside of the area to see something crazy right now. So 2191, you could see something crazy. I know that this is coming down in the post market, but you could see something crazy tomorrow if stocks start to suffer. I still think we have a chance for them to make a rigged move up before we actually see a downturn, but it looks like tomorrow is going to be a very pivotal day. As we look at the 30-minute, one thing that we always say is the 30-minute, when this big move happened, the 30-minute curled up, it never curled back down. So the fact that that is curling down here, you want to see if that can whip back up. Now, the last time that this did curl down during the big moment, you notice that that curled down for a second and then it just gapped up. Okay, this thing gapped up by I think like 50% the next day, and then that 30-minute did not turn down until it hit some good levels, and then once it turned down, that's when the fight started to happen. So just know there's a fight going on here. That's going to be important to understand with GameStop. But at the same time, these signals still look very, very good here. This just looks like a 30-minute pullback for now. We will see if this starts to add up to more than just a pullback in the signals. As we go over to volatility, just because I can't take a break, I got to keep going. This is going to be key. The daily scale. This is what we've been waiting for, right? We're waiting for this. We're waiting for this. We're waiting for this. And we're noticing that volatility could curl up on the daily chart. And if it curls up on the daily chart, what happens in the market? Bad things. Bad things. Really bad things over here. So volatility is about to come in maybe with some steam starting tomorrow. Look how close that is to crossing. If that crosses up tomorrow, the next day, maybe we see some, tomfoolery with the options expiration. But I think next week we might see some blood in the market as far as it goes right now if this volatility is able to curl up and remain curled up. One key thing to understand of why I'm saying that with volatility is because of this right here. The 50 has crossed the 200. We've remained above the 200. The last time that you did see this behavior was 2022. 2022 was the last time you saw that behavior, and that is when we were in some sort of corrective bear market. And notice that we're doing that as we're at all-time highs. So I think a big move from volatility is coming. We'll see if it's a correction, but for the most part, this could be a stock market crash right now, and you have multiple signals telling you that could happen very, very soon. Okay, so the main takeaway for this video is the big picture, guys. We at some point we trade the smaller time frames, but you have to pay attention to the big time frames at certain times. This is one of those times. This is a week you need to pay attention to it. Any time that this divergence can confirm, you have to pay attention. We just got bad news with SMCI. We have more earnings coming out. Those can always cause some bumps in the road, right? We still want to end up in the middle. We still want to be trading like water. But if this weekly curls down, we can see dramatic weakness in the market. And if that weakness does base out at some point and turn back up, then we are going to be stating the same thing. We are very comfortable with flipping back and forth. I always say it is great to be a flip-flopper in trading. It is not it's not good to be a flip-flopper in politics, but it's great to be a flip-flopper in trading because you will be always in the correct move if you're treating it like it can always bounce. If you're treating the signals like I need to pay attention to this, you will never be caught up in some kind of bad thing unless you see a big gap down. But sorry about SMCI. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really do appreciate it. If you want to learn how I do things, how I actually trade using these signals, you can get the course down in the description. That is 90% off through November. If you want to join the Patreon, we are giving updated monthly expected moves tomorrow night. And other than that, I really appreciate you guys being here. I really appreciate you guys liking, subscribing, joining all the stuff, commenting, asking questions, informing me about stuff, right? A lot of people in the chat were the reason that I was able to get some info on SMCI because it's hard for me to really look at news and do the live show at the same time because I'm very active during my live show. So if you'd like to join us for the live show, please come tomorrow. But I just want to say thank you to you guys. You guys are fantastic. I really appreciate you guys watching till the end, and I hope you have a great night. Stay safe out there. Go vote. Peace.